This is a video by Rich Pin. Today we're replacing an outer tie rod end. This vehicle happens to be a Generation 2 Saturn, but this procedure can pertain to any vehicle. First thing you need to do is get the vehicle up in the air, support it on jack stands, and remove the tire wheel assembly. Now this vehicle is the right side, so what we're going to do before we disassemble is move the steering wheel all the way to the left, and that will position the tie rod end in a more accessible position. Now before you do any disassembling, put a mark right here on the top of the inner tie rod shaft, so that way when you replace the outer tie rod, you can line up this mark parallel with the stud, and that should position it in the right place. Now the first thing we need to do is loosen the jam nut. Now in this particular car, it's a Saturn, and there is a 22mm hex on that jam nut, so we're going to be using a open end wrench. Now what I'm going to do is use a Babbitt hammer and just give it a little bump. There. And we just need it loose, just like that. We don't have to turn it off, just loosen that jam nut just like that, and that's fine. Okay, now we can remove the nut right here that secures the outer tie rod end to the spindle. Now in this 98 Saturn, it is a 18mm. Now when you remove the nut, put it back on just a couple of turns and leave that there. Now what we're going to do to remove the tie rod end is we're going to shock the knuckle here with a ball peen hammer. Now we can just remove the nut, and there she is. She's all out. Now it's just a matter of turning the tie rod end off. Now what you can do is you can count the amount of turns as you're turning it off, so you can make sure that the new one goes back the same amount of turns. But if you don't remove that jam nut or turn that jam nut, you can get it right back into the same position. Now what you can do is when you get your new tie rod end, take a scale and measure from the end of the tie rod end to the center. Make sure that the new one has the same dimension from the center to the edge. So if it does, then it will go on correctly. Now if the dimension from the center here to the edge is shorter or longer, you'll have to add or subtract that dimension and then move that jam nut accordingly. But most of them are the same dimension as the one that you've taken off. So then it's just a matter of spinning it back on. And then right against the jam nut. And then you'll put it back in there in the steering knuckle. Tighten up your nut. Tighten up this jam nut here. Make sure that the mark on the inner shaft lines up parallel to the stud, and that's it. You're all done. You've just replaced your outer tie rod end.